Okay, what are the principles of renovationism? Renovationism. Renovationist Christian is what I am. I imagine there's many people who think exactly like me that could easily embrace the title. Maybe they have their own title. Left-wing Catholic comes to mind. There's also, I suppose, the idea of renovationism for Islam, for Judaism, well, for any model for understanding reality that hasn't taken into account all the evidence that you have. So the word could be used for any system that hasn't taken into account all available evidence. And single human beings right now are capable of apprehending so much evidence because of the internet and YouTube, and they can, quickly jump down a particular line and understand what's going on here and what's going on there, and bring an entire organized set of ideas together to create a framework for their religious, spiritual, practical life. So I'm a renovationist Christian. In the first step, I believe that you cannot know if God exists, but I believe that it's best for you to act as if, to believe as if, to accept as if there is an all-loving God. Now, what does it mean to believe in an all-loving God? That is very complex and complicated. It usually does mean two things that are the same as saying I believe in an all-loving God is the same as saying that when I make decisions, I try to take into account the perspectives of all other people that have ever, are existing, or will ever exist. And when I say people, I guess I even include animals. I even include, chimpanzees and etc. Because, anything that has that level of, dogs, okay, well, another thing is that the same as saying I believe in God is that after I die, I will continue to exist and be judged. And that in some way, the way I've behaved in this life will dictate the life that I have after this life in some way. You don't have to believe in hell or the devil. As a matter of fact, I do not believe the devil exists anymore. I did for a long time. I don't believe that anymore. I had a very sophisticated understanding of the spiritual realm, how angels work. I would see the angels work in my life all the time with chance coincidences and things of that sort. I no longer believe any of that's true. It took a long time for this mind to work through that. Because, in part because, it is a reasonable way to think about the world. We're a pattern-seeking animal, we Homo sapiens, and we're always looking for patterns, and we're going to, I suppose schizophrenia run wild is pattern-seeking run wild. I think right off the bat, there's such a cool story I could tell real quick about a person I met. And I said, hey, in the news was this train accident that happened in, I don't know if I should tell this story. There was this train accident that happened in India. Like 288 people died. So you can look it up, like it was the day after that train accident happened. And I had this conversation with a person. And I said, hey, there was a train accident in India. 288 people died. The Prime Minister of India is going to be, go on a rampage trying to figure out what happened, what went wrong. It wasn't a terrorist thing. I think it was a mechanical problem. And the person said, responded to me, oh yeah, it's happening all the time. Those trains, they're filled with chemicals. They're using it to kill all the chickens. I can't try to remember. That's because Bill Gates owns that meat. He's putting the vaccine in that meat. And it was like, what? I mean, this person I was talking to was obviously a QAnon conspiracy theory person. And I could trace back to the time, the impossible meat that Bill Gates promotes, which is obviously a good thing. Putting the vaccine in the meat, it's like, okay. A lot of people think the COVID vaccine was evil. I don't. I mean, I read, the New England Journal of Medicine, Pfizer, the first Pfizer vaccine on it, and I have a training in statistics, so I was able to understand the Fisher exact test that they used. Well, I was able to understand the mathematics of it, and I understand how clinical trials are conducted, and I just don't think there was any way it was fraudulent. So, in my opinion, the vaccine definitely helped to prevent people from getting severe COVID or COVID at all. But anyway, stay here or there. What was I talking about? We're a pattern-seeking animal. So when a chance coincidence happens, you're going to think maybe that was the act of God or the angels, or, I suppose people who, actually try to worship Satan, are, they're going to, see an opportunity to steal something or do something that's evil and and they can see they can easily get away with it. They're going to think, Satan helped me to have that moment, and you see how my dark Lord helps me, and certainly people think like that. There's no doubt. I've seen it in my time. I knew two Satanists once, and I'm certainly not one. There's definitely people who think that way. But you walk down the street and you see $10,000 on the ground. You see money lying on the ground. There's two reactions you can have to it, right? There's multiple reactions you can have, and one, a good person is going to try to figure out who that money belongs to, and an evil person is going to be like, woohoo, it's all for me. So a good person will see an opportunity to get that money, give it back to who it belongs to, so maybe you could make, just feel good about yourself, maybe make a new friendship, something like that. An evil person's going to see it and just like, more for me, and just take it, right? And so the same incident, two different minds attaching their own patterns to it to decide what's really going on. So renovationist Christianity, renovationism, renovationist Christianity. More specifically, I guess I'm a renovationist Catholic. I'm still trying to work out the details of this, but it isn't hard to figure it out. Like the idea of renovationism is looking at an old way of looking at things and trying to renovate it so that it takes into account all available evidence, right? And Jesus has this thing in the Bible. I mean, maybe it's Jesus' thing, maybe it isn't, because it's, who knows what Jesus really ever said. You can just try to infer it when you read that stuff, because people are writing about what he said in a different language 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 years after he lived. But I've said that many times, and that's important. But there's a thing that Jesus seems to say where he goes, the path to salvation is narrow and difficult, and the path to damnation is wide, and many who take it. And I'm offended by that to some extent, but a renovationist approach would be trying to find some way to not care what the original intention of that statement was. And I got a bunch of things I could say about what the original intention of that statement was. But it's to find some way to fix it so that it can be something that's used, and you don't use it ever to try to control people or to make a trap for people. Or, you see, there's something to say there. I mean, St. Paul, I remember once, I think I wrote this in one time. There was one time I said, like, the priest, the oaths that priests take are like the trap for people. Like somebody believes so strongly in Jesus and believes so strongly in these sacraments that they're willing to take oaths of obedience and chastity and poverty in some cases, and live their life according to those oaths. And it's like, I once mentioned to a Jewish rabbi, we'll create a set of rules for you that'll break your spirit until you'll finally realize you should be humble and not think you know everything. And the Jewish rabbi said to me, yeah, but it doesn't work. It doesn't. You should see the personalities of some of these 60-year-old priests. Some of them are pretty good. Yeah. Some of them, because I imagine many of them, ultimately think like me, and they're able to laugh about the predicament that they're in. They know there's something phony about what their entire religion is, but they really don't have anywhere else to go. And there's plenty of good that can be done in the role as a priest, so they're just stuck in this position. I would seek to free them. And if I was Pope, I'd free them from their oaths right away. You can take their oaths again later, but refashion theology in such a way as that it maximizes human freedom, maximizes human creativity, maximizes human thought. And in fact, even though this is ill-defined and hard to explain, maximizes human love, So what do I think? So if I were to read the profession of faith of the Catholic Church. It goes something like this. I'm using my memory here. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, of all that is seen, visible and invisible, and we believe in one Son, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, consubstantial with the Father. They added that somewhere along the way, and sometimes I get confused about how to say it. We believe in one God. What would a renovationist Christian say? I mean, you want to say things as gracefully as you can. If it's easy to define the word belief so that it's okay to go like that. We believe in God. The idea of the oneness of God, was as a response to people who have problems understanding the Trinity. And the doctrine of the Trinity can help me get through a spiritual event in my life, a mystical event in my life, an event in my life where my brain was going through, lots of interesting sensory inputs, and I was trying to make sense of everything. Right? The Trinity can be the idea of the Trinity can be a very, very good idea. There's no objective truth to it, though. Okay, we don't even know if God exists, but it's best for us to accept the existence of an all-loving God. Jesus was no more or less a son of God than anyone else. Muhammad was not the last prophet. There has never been a prophet. People just claim to have been prophets, maybe even thought they were prophets, but they weren't. So that's what I think you should hold as Bible. How do I know this to be true? I don't. But I'll tell you what, it is the axiom. It's the axiom that I can accept in my mind that easily explains what I'm seeing in the world around me. It easily explains it. Why are all these different conflicting religions and revelations? This group is saying this, and that group is saying that, and this person over here is saying something else. And everyone, when you push comes to shove, it says, well, our leader said this, and that's the reason why that's true. And it's like, okay. But that contradicts what this guy over here is saying, and it contradicts what that guy over there is saying, and what she's over here saying. So what's the best answer to it? Best answer to it is human beings are either lying and trying to create cults and groups so that they can be on the ground floor of some organization that they have more power over, or they really think that God is communicating with them. And I can understand that, because once upon a time I thought God communicated to me as well. And I've been stumbling along ever since, trying to make sense of those 6 religious visions that I had in those days of fasting and the purity that I thought was in my mind and my heart at the time. And there was, a correct word for it. There was a certain purity to it. But it's, it's certainly better to recognize a set of postulates, a set of axioms that you can put together for yourself, and that take into account all of the available evidence, and then you build up a system for understanding reality. And so that would go with, you start with the Big Bang, and you take a look at something like cellular automata, because it's probably some initial condition and set of rules that with time is pushing the universe into existence, and it started at the Big Bang and expanded and got very big. Was there something before the Big Bang? I'm just going to hold as a postulate that there was God before, during, and after, and all through creation, and God is watching it. I don't know what mechanisms he's using to watch it, and he's the one who triggered it into existence and seeing what happens. Now, here's where I diverge from probably everyone else that I'm aware of. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He didn't even know human beings were going to come into existence. If you really play out what I'm saying to you, then no idea. That would have been impossible to say that, even 200 years ago. But now we look at the complexity of the universe is so complex that we can see just how large it is, and we have evidence, but we can't see it, that the universe is even larger than what we can even see. And then we have these ideas of the multiverse that our artists do a really good job of talking about in movies and stuff. The Spideyverse, across the Spideyverse, all of that. God is all loving, and he's watching this reality unfold. And he, he's I'm sure, very interested in it. And I'm sure he's full of love. And to the extent that we are individual beings that can be cut out of reality and put into a different reality and continue to experience life somewhere else. And what is life? An organized exchange of electrons in a systematic system. You got to just look at the Origin of Life videos by Nick Lane and some of the other people on YouTube that talk about how did life get started on the planet Earth. I'm trying to I'm listening to The Vital Question by Nick Lane on Audible, and there's whole, he's said whole pages that just went in and out one ear. I didn't know what he was talking about, but there are times where I deeply understand what he was getting at. But it's something like, the best evidence for where life was founded on the planet Earth was an alkaline volcanic vents at the bottom of the ocean, where the ocean at that time had a different kind of chemistry, and because of the way things were forced into each other, things that typically never react, which I think was CO2 and H2, hydrogen, and carbon dioxide, which never react with each other ordinarily, were put in a position where they were forced to react to each other because of the other things around them. And I think that has to do with photosynthesis. Well, anyway, brilliant explanation. And understand something deep here is the fact that a person like that understands it way better than me is very powerful evidence to me. Because there are certain things in mathematics that I understand more deeply, I'm sure, than Nick Lane does. Do you follow? There's certain understandings I have that are just deep. Then I think about how the depth of knowledge that some Supreme Court justice might have, or the depth of knowledge that a medical doctor might have, and on and on. And then collectively, we human beings, see the best of the ideas of this branch expressed by the best of the people in that branch. Everything starts to come together, and you create a more coherent system. We can't be stuck with a brilliant system that was worked out before we had better evidence for it. And so, let's once again, I mean, I do this a lot, but my mind keeps roaming over it, and I know I'm being redundant, but that's okay for me. I need to be redundant right now. Let's let our minds go through it. What is the Christian model? The Christian model is that God created the universe in 7 days, and everyone knows it doesn't really have to be 7 days, and some literal interpreters and people argue about that, which again is an extreme waste of time. You could be doing something much better with your life than trying to argue with somebody if it was literally 7 days or not. Oh boy. But anyway, God triggers the universe into existence, right? This is the model. And then he made Adam, and in some way he made Eve with Adam. And you don't have to, take literally, I suppose, the rib story or whatever. But one thing you do have to take seriously is the idea that our original human parents sinned. And that is the reason why we suffer. And it's only through Jesus' act of obedience and death on the cross that the world has been redeemed, and through the power of the Holy Spirit sanctified for all time to come. And that sin that we were in is the reason why women suffer in childbirth. That sin that we're in is the reason why man has to work endlessly all the days of his life, toil, and not really see the rewards of his toil sometimes. But through that belief in Jesus and the death and resurrection of him on the cross, the world has been redeemed. And God so loved the world that he gave the only begotten Son, so that we shall not perish but have everlasting life. And it's like, well, I don't see everlasting life happening, but, sure, when I die, I'll probably have everlasting life. And so we can, believe in this model. The biggest problem with it is the archaeological record. The biggest problem with it is the clear evidence that we come out of a process of evolutionary development, and that we are beings arising out of the animal kingdom. And, we're rising out of the animal kingdom, and all along, nobody's been talking to us at all, and we've been trying to figure out what we are. And the need to have certain answers for that, in sundry times and places, people have come along and answered the questions of what we are. And I think, truly, that there's a deep staying power to Christianity that arises out of the deepest secrets of Christianity. Because if you keep reading the Bible and keep reading the Bible, you'll start to discover certain things. And I think it's the relationship between Leviticus 25:10, the idea of Jesus proclaiming a year acceptable to the Lord, and the seven seals of Revelation are probably three big ideas that you ultimately can link together. And it's sort of like this jubilee, the act of freedom. Every 50 years, you have this act of freedom where you free everybody from, everyone from the enslavement they're in. Now, what are we enslaved to? You can be enslaved to all kinds of things, but ultimately you can be enslaved to your oaths or to debt, or you can be enslaved to contracts that you really wish you didn't have to follow anymore, or, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Enslaved to the fact that your neighbor looks at these instruments as weapons and not as instruments to protect themselves or something. And so you're enslaved to the fact that everyone over there owns weapons. What can I do? You're enslaved to prisons because you can be put in jail. That's what Bastille Day is such a big day in France, when they just let everyone out of jail. I talked about the seven seals of Revelation in a different video. But you see, even that, all of that understanding comes from me trying like mad to make the Bible fit what I'm seeing in reality. And the reality is revolutions can and do happen. I certainly do not want one to happen in America right now. My best guess about what America should be doing is continue on the course that it's on. And people need to get together and create some kind of change to make things better for not just for us, but for the world. That's why, I can't effectively call for it. But if I could effectively call for it, I would wish all Americans would get on board with the idea of writing a new constitution. That's what I would do. And we should do it for the semi-quintennial, right? For 2026, 250 years since the Constitution was written. That's me going off the deep end there. But you see, so go back. What am I really saying about the nature of God? God did not know that we were even going to come into existence. He does not know what the future of my life is going to be. He is watching it play out. I am sure he's very interested in it, or he would not allow time to continue to push this universe into existence. God is time. Time is the power of God. God cannot be outside of himself. That age-old question is answered with that trick, that logical trick. How many Catholic priests or other theologians have I ever heard say, God is outside of time? And I'd be like, yeah, I guess he is. No, I'm standing on just as certain ground as they are when they say God is outside of time. I'm saying God is time, and God cannot be outside of himself. And it's right there where suddenly there's a huge unlock. I can reread the Bible and recognize every bit of it. I'm able to get down to the foundation of why it's there and realize how it's wrong, but also realize how to renovate it to make it so that we can use it, so that we make it right. You know what I'm saying? But it's only through our logic and our thinking that we can make it right. And it's almost like I'm creating the progressive God. And I see that because, if you really believe God intended for there to be human beings, men and women, then you're going to be anti-gay marriage. You're going to be lots of conservative attitudes will come upon you. But I'm a genuine believer in an all-loving God because I accept it as a postulate, and then I put onto that all-loving God the best of my evidence for what I think about that all-loving God. And I don't think he's ever communicated to anyone. I don't think he can be outside of time. I don't think he knows what our futures are. I don't think that there was a time in the past where he didn't even know human beings were going to come into existence, because it took us 13.8 billion years to come into existence in the first place. Right? So then the question becomes, when the Bible says something like he made them man and woman, and people insist there's only men and women, there can't be other genders, and when there's only men and women, there can't gay marriages are wrong, and things of that sort. I'm like, how do you know what? 8 billion genetic codes currently walking around on this planet. They all have to fit in 2 categories. Seriously, is that real? Are you sure that's really how it works? And maybe there's a lot more variety than in those genetic codes than you suspect. And it's when you start to think like that, and God's just watching what happens, and two men decide to love each other and get married. Two women decide to love each other and get married. Hey, maybe even three or four. Because we certainly see that in Islamic culture, right? This kind of thing happening. God's watching it, and he doesn't even know the outcome sociologically of those kinds of marriages, and they can be a very beautiful thing. I think, in fact, that they are often very beautiful things. But there's a lot of people that should never have gotten married to each other, right? To the man and woman, who everyone looks at it like they shouldn't have gotten married. I remember there was a priest, I think, once indicated that I should never have married my wife, And I was like, I don't know what he was thinking. Anyway, I gotta go do stuff. I love you all. Just making another video. I wish it had more focus. I'll get there when there's more time.